Good morning, Flagler. The doctors are in. I'm Dr. Scott Cleos.
And I'm Dr. Andrea Cleos.
And we are here once again to talk about your health and health issues right here in Flagler, Volusia, and St. Johns County. What's happening this week in Volusia, St. Johns, and Flagler County?
I have had some really cool things happen. We've got a farm and maybe more that are wanting to be stamped approval by Shield of Life, meaning supporting regenerative farming. We have a farmer that's out in Osteen, the Seidel family farm, who wants to get together and wants to talk about Shield of Life supporting their pasture-raised chicken and proteins. I'll be working with him and meeting him. So excited.
Are we getting free eggs for the rest of our lives?
I don't think so, but we can support him because this is what it's about, is supporting people that do things naturally to help their business so that we can all be healthier. And then maybe one of these days
free eggs.
We're going to get is restaurants that want to have a stamp of Shield of Life. And so we would get healthier restaurant choices. And we're getting more and more people coming to Shield of Life. And I think we're going to be doing an event in Palm Coast where we'll have a live event, probably be about $50 for 2 hours. The first hour will be a live lecture where you guys can come in person. And then the second hour will be a shorter lecture on pulsed electromagnetic frequency mats and the science behind them. And then there'll be opportunities for people to sit on the mats and that would like to and set up appointments and try them out. And again, one-time use, sometimes people feel benefits, but a lot of times you need to do sequential uses. And I want to say ahead on that because we went to Europe to see our family for a wedding. And we hiked some pretty intense mountains in the Alps and then came very steep down some steep mountains, very, very steep, and some steep going up. And my right knee was bothering me. And I'm usually good about not having knee pain because I use the cloud map. But because we were on vacation and we were out with people right and left and family members that we hadn't seen for 2 years and heading to bed by 12 o'clock at night, which is way past my bedtime, and then trying to get up the next day and meet the next people and go hiking and whatever else we were doing. And my knee was sore and I was really frustrated because hopefully I'll get into that Boston Marathon. And I thought, oh no, this knee issue. And then I started using my cloud mat and sure enough, it's gone. Despite running speed runs, 12 speed runs Monday and 6 miles on Tuesday, and then doing 2 or 3 miles around the speed runs. So it amazes me, but again, you can't just use it one time. It's the sequential use of me getting back on that mat, morning, noon, or morning and the evening. Sometimes I use it in the afternoon if I'm home, and I'm doing lectures or writing papers or doing something like that. I will wrap my knee if I'm just sitting there, but it is amazing how much better I feel. My back was irritating me. That went away. It's those electromagnetic frequency mats really, really are very helpful. But again, you've got to use them. So these are all cool things going on with Shield of Life. So again, we will let you know the location, the place and time, and hopefully we will have the podcast studios, WNZF and Flagler Voice there present. We'll have to be talking to everybody about doing that because we want Flagler County, we want Volusia County, we want St. Johns County, we want everyone to be healthy and with less medications and live a healthier, happier life for longer periods of time. And when we pull our efforts together to make a place a better place, we have more power and a bigger voice. And people start believing that they can make change. And that's what's important, is that we can all be part of an amazing change to improve the lives and the health of the people that we love and care for.
So on the last show, we were talking about some of the movies that we watched, and a couple of the listeners said that they watched both movies. They were the Kiss the Ground and Common Ground. And they really enjoyed them, the people that wrote back and said that they hope that this is something that they could see more of, because as you talked about in the last show, that we're dealing with changes in the weather pattern, whether it's a normal cyclic event or we're exacerbating that. But it sounds like that we have figured out ways to kind of contend with that and maybe capture some of these greenhouse gases and carbons and kind of put them back into the ground. So for those of you who didn't listen to the last show or weren't familiar with what we were talking about, we did see these two movies. One of them was called Common Ground, and the other one was called Kiss the Ground. And basically it was talking about regenerative farming, which is Andrea's been into for a couple of years now. So, highly recommended. One of the girls went through all of this and said, I really love the movies, but I got a question unrelated to that. And she was asking about hiatal hernias. I think her name was Debbie or something. I can't remember exactly, but she says, is there any way to treat a hiatal hernia besides surgery?
Absolutely. So Debbie, we can change your diet.
So it's not, it's treating the symptoms. The hiatal hernia itself, it's not really fixable with anything but surgery, but there are things you can do to mitigate your symptoms, because the problem is when you have a hiatal hernia is your stomach herniates through up the diaphragmatic hiatus, the little space in the diaphragm that the esophagus passes through. And in some people, the stomach will actually herniate up into the chest. And when you have that, you lose some of the function of what's called the lower esophageal sphincter. And so then you're prone to reflux and all kinds of other stuff. You get some chest pain from that. So as Andrew was saying, yes, you can treat the symptoms of a hiatal hernia by changing your diet, not eating too late. You don't want to eat late and then lay down, because then all that stuff's going to reflux back up into your esophagus and cause esophagitis and irrigation. I'm still thinking about the other movie, irritation. But to treat the hiatal hernia itself, they have to pull it back down and basically plicate it or sew it back down beneath the diaphragm. They've got different ways to do that. There is, they can pull it down and they can do a Nissen wrap, where they take a piece of fundoplication, where they take a portion of the upper stomach and wrap it around the esophagus.
But before you make that kind of permanent change, I would do everything you can in lifestyle.
Of course.
And come and see us. If it's Debbie, we don't remember whose name it is. We should have looked it up, the email.
I should have looked it up before.
But Shield of Life, FL@gmail.com. That's shieldoflifefl@gmail.com. We'd be happy to sit down with you for a one-on-one and talk about things you can do in your life to help you change, to make it so that you're not having reflux symptoms.
So to talk about what's going on in my life, I was in the gym the other day with a buddy of mine, and we were talking. He was telling me about creatine. And so he was talking about how he was taking the supplement, and then goes and tells me how he doesn't take any supplements. And I'm like, you just told me you were taking creatine. And he goes, well, that's different. That's natural. I said, well, it's still a supplement. So we got into some big argument about whether it was necessary to supplement. And you got to understand where I'm coming from. I don't believe that you need to supplement anything unless you're not, eating properly,
or exposed to sunlight enough.
Right. If you're not getting exposed to sunlight, you may be low on your vitamin D. So I do take a little supplement for, vitamin D for that very reason. But I don't think you have to take mega doses of amino acids and creatine. And what are the other things that people are taking now? Our daughter just did some kind of...
those peptides.
Peptides, all these things.
Expensive peptides.
Yeah. So, I really think what you need, you can get from your diet. But the key is, are you getting it from your diet? So he went out, and after we had this discussion, I told him he was being a fool for taking this stuff. And he asked ChatGPT or one of these AI programs basically to, in a nasty, abrasive, New York accent, to tell me why I was wrong and I should let him take the creatine. You
can do whatever you want to do.
That's what I told him. He's trying to play this thing to me, and I'm like, Kyle, you can do whatever you want. I don't care. You can go shoot up cocaine, or
it's your life.
It's your life. Do whatever you want. I'm just giving you what I think. But it got me thinking about this stuff. And so I did a little bit of research. I'm going to do a video on it, because that's what I do when there's something new and exciting that I want to learn about. The best way for me to learn about it is to make a little video so you guys can learn about it. But I really get to learn about it because, before I do that video, I have to research it. So, creatine is a naturally occurring substance in our bodies. And I didn't realize how much it actually did. But the confusion with creatine is it's very close to a word called creatinine. They sound almost exactly the same. And they are related because creatine gets converted into creatinine in the body. And creatine is an intermediate energy molecule that we use in our muscles, basically to restore, the energy molecule ATP quickly so that we can continue to use our muscles. And creatinine is a waste product of protein metabolism, and creatine, after it gets worn out, gets converted into creatinine. And creatinine is one of these things that we measure in the blood to see how well your kidneys are working. So one of the things that you'll see in patients who are taking mega doses of creatine, the intermediate energy is that they have a bump in their creatinine. And so people will look at that and say, oh, you're hurting your kidneys. But there's research that says that's not necessarily true. They get a natural bump in the creatinine just because they have more creatine. And they say, young muscular men will have higher creatinine than the average population. But my contention is, you're making your kidneys work harder, for sure, because that's their sole purpose, is to take these nitrogen waste products like creatinine, urea, stuff like that, excrete them from the body. So if you've got constantly elevated creatinine, your kidneys are working hard to get rid of these. You don't know what this is going to do to you in 30 years. And they say, oh, we got research on this for decades and it's fine. But believe me,
on one person
you don't want to roll that. You don't want to roll those dice, because being on dialysis in your 50s is going to be horrible, right? It's a lifestyle commitment.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So when I was at the obesity conference, and I think I might have mentioned this on the show, there was a guy who specialized in muscle physiology, and he did muscle biopsies on people that were taking alternative forms, and he studied also animals that were taking alternative forms of protein. So taking proteins that came from whey protein or proteins that came, for protein shakes. And one of the things he looked at was creatine, and he said it did increase the muscle size, but it actually caused more of a collection of water in the muscles rather than improved muscle mass in a form of healthy muscle growth.
That's true. That's exactly what it does.
So he said, really, you're not really improving muscle
You are a great straight
and
man.
quantity.
This is exactly where I was going with it.
And so he
How long have we been doing this show together? It's perfect.
Well, it's interesting because he said, if you really want to improve muscle, just eat more protein, but don't take creatine.
So I'm going to get into that in a moment. We're going to take a quick
And also
break.
did not recommend taking alternative forms of protein shakes and all of that.
No, you
junk.
eat naturally, for sure. But we're going to take a quick break. If you have any questions for myself or Dr. Andrew, you can email us at the doctors in DOCTORISIN at WNZF.com. You're listening to the Doctors In on WNZF News Radio, 1550 AM, 94.9 FM. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
Radiology Associates has been a trusted name in Volusia, Flagler, and St. Johns County for over 50 years. Radiology Associates is the first and only radiology provider to bring our neighbors of Flagler County 3 Tesla MRI, 64-slice CT, and time-of-flight PET CT in our Palm Coast Imaging and Town Center Imaging locations. This is our community. Our doctors live here and strive to provide only the best care to you, our neighbors. For more information about Radiology Associates, visit us online at radiologyassociatesimaging.com.
She's Carla.
And that's Alan.
If you don't know who we are,
now you do.
We're the owners of your local Benjamin Moore paint store.
Next time you're thinking about painting, think about us. Benjamin Moore, corner of Old Kings and Utility Drive,
Palm Coast.
Thank you so much for recommending us to your family and friends. When you need a 30, 60, or 90-minute massage, it's real easy to book your appointment online. MassageByNatalie.org. MassageByNatalie.org.
And we're back. Andrew and I had a very interesting conversation at the break. I can't share that with you guys. It's kind of personal. I got a new pair of underwear, and they were kind of riding funny on me, so I had to take a break and adjust all that. But we are back, and we were talking about
I can't
creatine.
take him anywhere.
I know. Well, it was
Okay,
hurting.
let's talk about creatine.
Okay, so we were talking about creatine, and Andrew asked the question or posed a statement that says, well, the guy that she saw said that creatine, what it does is it does make your muscles bigger, but it just makes them, more filled with water, which is 100% correct, okay? So creatine serves two purposes. For regenerating your energy storing molecules, which is mainly ATP for adenosine triphosphate. That's what ATP is kind of the universal energy molecule in the body. Everything that we start off with, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, eventually get converted to ATP, which is then used by our body to run all of our machinery, right? So what happens in the muscles is as we're using our muscles, we take ATP and we remove one of the phosphate groups from the adenosine triphosphate and turn it into ADP, and then which is adenosine diphosphate. And in the process, energy is given up that is used by our muscles. So to restore that, we need a quick way to change ADP back to ATP, and that's where creatine comes in. So creatine goes through a process where it can actually bind a phosphate group. So it picks up these phosphate groups that are basically produced from ATP, and then when they get converted to ADP, and you have phosphocreatine. Okay, so creatine plus phosphate is phosphocreatine. That's that intermediate energy. And what phosphocreatine does is it then goes and finds the ADP, the diphosphate, gives that phosphate back to the ADP and makes adenosine triphosphate. So this creatine is stored in our muscles to facilitate that energy transfer back to ADP to make ATP.
How does that work with the mitochondria and that whole
in the
turbine?
Mitochondria.
That's in that turbine.
Yes, so that's all in the...
That's the electron transport chain.
Yeah, so it's all part of that part, in the mitochondria, which is our energy producing...
So creatine is in that turbine, where they're shooting down the hydrogen.
It's in the cytoplasm, and it picks up
as the external cytoplasm goes into the internal cytoplasm, there's actually that turbine, and as those hydrogens are pumped from the external side to the internal side, that's the attachment of the ADP to the ATP, making the monodiphosphate to the triphosphate.
Right. So that's how creatine is used, and eventually, after a couple of cycles of going from creatine to phosphocreatine, eventually it gets worn out and then converted to creatinine. And creatinine, the conversion of creatine to creatinine is basically dehydration. You remove the equivalent of a water molecule, and then it becomes
a phosphate molecule.
Phosphate
already happened.
The phosphate's already happened. The phosphate's already given up.
And then they become dehydrogenated.
And then you take a water molecule off, and then creatine becomes creatinine.
And where does that happen?
And after, I don't know exactly.
In the cytoplasm?
In the cytoplasm. So once you get creatinine, that's a waste product, and that's irreversible. Once it gets converted to creatinine, it cannot be converted back to creatine, and then it gets excreted. You pee it out. So that's that whole cycle.
And that's where your kidneys are getting strained.
Right.
But supposedly when you stop creatine use, the kidney functions go back to normal. But if you did it for 20, 30 years or a long period of time, they say that supposedly the data shows that it goes back to normal, but
that's part of the argument for these guys who are avid users. They say just because that number goes up, it's not necessarily indicative of renal insufficiency. It's just that you have more creatinine available to clear. So that's why it returns to normal quickly. But I'm with you. I'm concerned that if you do that for decades, eventually you're going to see repercussions, and your kidneys are going to suffer for that. But
people say
that's my opinion. It's not anything based on
some of the
fact.
studies with creatine have been pushed on women with osteoporosis, because part of the reason we get osteoporosis is if we don't have enough muscle turgor, strength, tension on the bones decay. So, and these, especially now with the GLP-1 agonists where they're increasing not eating and doing fasting, and a lot of these people are still eating crappy amounts of food or the wrong food, but just eating less of it. They're getting hair loss. They're having all sorts of side effects. The problems are they're not doing any resistance training. They're not taking healthy protein in. And as a result, the muscles waste and then the bones waste. And then they have higher risk for osteoporosis. So some people say, well, if you take creatinine, that prevents the creatine. That
sound very similar.
Yeah, that causes less muscle wasting. It's really utilizing the muscles, doing resistance training,
so that's the
so that you're putting tension on the bone to protect the bone.
Before you keep going, I haven't finished my discussion on creatine. So creatine, the reason it draws water, the main purpose of the creatine is basically to transfer energy. Take that phosphate group, put it back into the ADP to make ATP. But while it's there, the creatine is referred to as a Zwitter ion. Zwitter is German for hermaphrodite, when a hermaphrodite has both male and female parts. I don't know where the Germans came up with this, but if you look at the molecule, the creatine molecule, it has an acid on one side, it has a base on it, very strong organic base on one side and a weak acid on the other. So what defines an acid is something that gives up a hydrogen, right? And what defines a base is something that takes a hydrogen. So what happens when this thing is in a neutral pH in the body around 7.3, 7.4, one side gives up a hydrogen, and the other side takes a hydrogen, which makes one side positive and one side negative. All right, so you have an acid on one side, base on the other. I guess I don't know what side is male or female, but this ionic compound that now has a charge on it causes water because it causes osmosis. So it draws water into the cell. So the more creatine you have inside your cell, the more water it's going to draw in. And that's why it makes the muscles bigger. It's not because of the energy transfer. That's what it's mainly there for. But an excess amount of creatine will make the muscles bigger by drawing water into it. And that's why. Okay. It's just to close that whole loop right there. So what these guys like that work out is that they take this creatine and they look like their muscles are bigger because they are. But like your friend said, it's not because they're actually, your lecturer said, it's not because they're forming bigger muscles per se, it's just increasing the water. And as soon as you stop the creatine, they're going to return back to their baseline, right? Yeah. But one thing you got to remember is that we can produce some creatine in our bodies. It actually is an amino acid. It's a modified amino acid, which is all over our body. And I can't remember the two. It's alanine and something else that can be converted into creatine for use in the muscles. About 50% of all our requisite creatine comes from that conversion. But half of the creatine that we need actually comes from the food that we eat. And the best, sources of that creatine is going to be animal-based proteins, right? So meat, fishes, stuff like that. Chicken to a lesser degree, but it still has it in there. So if you are vegan and you're not eating any kind of meat, this is a kind of population that may want to supplement with creatine. Creatine. So I almost got to confuse myself. You probably want to supplement because the only way you're getting creatine is the conversion that your body's doing. You can get some, plant sources that have alanine, the amino acids in them, and your body can convert some of that. But if you really need to, boost the energy transfer molecules in your body, you may have to supplement. So in those particular individuals, I would suggest you may want to take a little bit of a creatine supplement. For the rest of us, you just have to eat, some animal-based protein every now and then to get what you need.
And if you really want to grow muscle, doing resistance training plus after doing your resistance training, eating protein, because when you tear down muscle and then you eat protein after tearing it down through weightlifting, you actually will induce more muscle bulk. So that's the best time to increase protein intake is right after a hard workout, a resistance training workout. Not even when you go running, even when I run, that's when I take in my protein because I just tore down a bunch of muscles from running 6 or 10 miles. So it's when I take in my protein is after a workout.
Didn't know that.
Yep.
Do you take your creatine in too?
I don't. I was taking creatine, and then when I heard that lecture back in March, I'm like, nope, screw this. I'm not taking any more creatine.
Well, I mean, again,
I just don't need it. I'd rather take natural forms of protein.
Well, then that's exactly right.
And it kind of goes back to our philosophy in Shield of Life.
Yes, and that's what I would tell people is if you're eating a balanced diet and you're taking in enough animal protein, I mean, the most creatine is going to come from like red meats and stuff like that, which I know you're not really into, but you can get some of it from fish. We found out that shrimp doesn't have that much creatine, which I was kind of surprised.
But sardines have a lot of creatine.
Right. So sardines do, and some of the
sardines.
other fish. Yeah, Andrea loves the sardines. I'm not.
Yeah, they're not salty. They really taste like tuna.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you
not
think
a big
of
fan of that either.
I think you're thinking of
anchovies.
Yeah, I don't really. I do not like anchovies.
My mom used to.
If it's mixed in a salad dressing and I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
I've had
there,
it like that. You know, a friend of ours used to make. But my mom used to put anchovies on pizza. And the problem was, if she shared a pizza with me and I had a half vegetable and her half was anchovies, the whole pizza tasted like anchovy. It didn't matter. All you need is one anchovy on the pizza and the whole pizza tastes like an anchovy.
To be honest with you, the health benefit of anchovies is not nearly what you get in sardines.
I thought they were really good for you because they're freaking horrible.
No. That's a misnomer. No, sardines are not that healthy. In fact, omega-3 wise, they're not as high. They don't have a significant amount of protein. They have anchovies. They have way too much.
Sardines are good. You said.
Sardines are great. They have the anchovies have too much salt. They don't have as much omega-3 health benefits. Their general benefit is very low compared to...
Down with the anchovies.
Yeah.
No
sardines,
more anchovies on pizza.
Yeah, sardines.
Should we put sardines on pizza?
Sardines are much healthier for you. I don't know that I want them on my pizza.
I don't want anything on my pizza except a vegetable.
And
I'm not a vegetarian. I don't know what it is on my pizza.
Well,
I just like vegetables.
Go cauliflower crust, man.
No.
It's so crunchy.
I'm not going that far.
But you did like
tree
it.
Hugging.
No.
I mean, I did it. I did it for you.
But you liked it.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah, you really liked it, actually.
I did like it. It was a little bit
you see,
crunchy.
This is the thing. This is what cracks me up. When people really like something, but they just, for principle purposes, they just can't admit
No, but Andrew, when I go to Italy, like we just did.
Well, that's different.
And I get
they
pizza
make thin
there.
crust.
And they have a thin crust pizza
and it's
that's
not
made
full of crap.
with all of the gluten that you can possibly handle.
No, but they don't.
And it's so good.
They have very healthy gluten without spraying chemicals all over. It's real grain.
Yeah, but it's real grain.
Yes, and it's made out of flour, water, and salt, and that's it.
That's right.
It's not all the other chemicals that our pizzas have.
No cauliflower. Andrea, okay, I'm going to remind you that all of these like healthy alternative foods that they make out of vegetables.
I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you remember the sausage patties I used to eat?
They're full of chemicals. They're gross.
Chemicals.
Yeah.
They're gross.
Well, I was the one that showed you all the chemicals on
and
them.
then, back when people would say,
Morningstar sausage patties.
Don't eat butter. Butter's bad for it. Okay. Eat the margarine. We take natural vegetable oil. We hydrate it.
No, we never have anything other than nature.
But there's plenty of examples in the past where they say, "Oh, this is better for you," but it's not. So if the pizza has been made for hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years with flour, and everyone's done well with it, that's what I'm sticking with.
But
who knows what they're putting in that cauliflower crust?
The problem is who knows what they're doing to our grain? Well, we do know what they're doing to our grain. They've bleached it.
Not in Italy.
They've sprayed chemicals on it. Well, you saw the whole show that we watched of how they manipulated the grain in our country. It's horrible. And added all sorts of bleaching agents and chemical agents to our grain. And our grain is not even natural grain anymore. So it's what's causing a lot of harm to us. That's why we don't endorse starchy foods.
Except when we're in Italy.
And you eat more of it than I do.
Pizza. Yes, I do. My favorite pizza over there is called capricciosa. So if you go to Italy and you see capricciosa on the menu, think of me. I used to get something called quattro stagioni, which means the 4 seasons, but capricciosa is my new one. So, all right. So that's all the time we have. We got to wrap things up. If you guys have any questions for myself or Dr. Andrea, as always, you can email us at thedoctorsin, doctorsin@WNZF.com. As always, stay happy, stay healthy. We'll see you next time. The doctors are out.